Counselor Smith.
Here.
Walden.
Here.
Allemon.
Here.
Grant. Here. Harden.
Here.
All right, got everybody. Yeah. I need to get a motion to dispense with the reading and approve the minutes from our last meeting on February the 3rd.
Second.
All right, motion from Mr. Harden, second from Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Those minutes are approved. Okay, we're going to take some things out of order tonight because we have kind of a long agenda. And we're going to try to help everybody with timing. So the first item we are going to take is from the new business agenda. 06-02-25 request for consideration of an unsolicited proposal regarding the old police headquarters from Mike Mouron and our mayor, Alex.
Yep.
You want to give us a little preamble?
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick one. Mike is here, and he has proposed an idea that I'll let him talk about regarding the old police station. We've had a lot of suggestions on what that is, but we haven't had any actual proposals, at least not concrete proposals. This one is, and I'm going to let him speak to it, but I will say that what intrigued me about it was that it is not big in terms of what he's proposing that's built, which I liked. It also includes a good bit of green space, which I liked. And is something that, we've heard from a lot of constituents that want some tax revenue from there. We've heard from a lot of constituents that want some green space from there. And so this is something that intrigued me when we talked about it. So anyway, I'm going to let him explain it, but I'll be around for any questions if anyone's got any for me. So,
All right, y'all come on out. Do y'all need an easel?
I'll hold it up.
Okay. All right, perfect.
We're going through a curve that I thought we were 6 in new business and had a few ahead of us. So anyway, thank you for being here. I'm Mike Mouron. I've assembled a team of people. I think the names will be familiar. We have Chambliss King as the proposed architect on this development. Chuck Kelly is the landscape architect. Reeves Construction as the GC, and Pahakis Restaurant Group as the owner. As Alex was saying, with my presence in Homewood, I've learned of some of the challenges associated with the old police station. I guess it's been vacant 3 years now, 2 or 3 years?
Longer than that.
5 years? Time flies, right? Anyway, obviously nothing's been done with it. There's, I'm sure, some cost associated with maintaining it. And it's certainly not contributing to anything of the city's coffers. As Alex says, I understand it's zoned for a building that could be relatively tall, and that's not desired by a lot of people. As Alex said, there were a number of people in the past that I think signed a petition that they would like a green space. I know the city wanted to monetize the police station. And lastly, they wanted hopefully a use that would generate some sales tax, property tax, whatever. So let me show you what we're proposing. And this, by the way, is very rough, and I'll get into why that is. But what we're proposing is a steakhouse. We think that that's a color. Thank you, John. Thank you. We think that's a venue that's not existing in Homewood right now. Think of the Miss Betty's in Mountain Brook Village that was built in some downtown. So we're proposing a steakhouse, and we're proposing putting it in the far southwest corner of the property, leaving the rest of this as a pocket public park. We would buy the land at the highest price paid per square foot in Homewood for the area for which we have exclusive use. The city would retain ownership of the pocket park. The money we're proposing to pay for the land would be held in escrow. It would be used to clear the site of the existing police station, which has some asbestos. It's got some underground tanks that need to be removed. And then the remainder of the money would be used to install the public park. If there's a shortfall of the money to install the public park, that would fall on us. So the city would not be out any money. Once it's completed, we would have a steakhouse run by Nick Pahakis' group, throwing off hopefully a lot of sales tax, liquor tax, and additional property tax. We're asking for no city incentives, no sales tax incentives. So at the end of the day, the city has what we, and I'm gonna ask the architects to go through a little quickly, I know y'all have a lot to do, quickly the concept on the design. Chuck Kelly's here, he could speak to the landscape. And so, in essence, that's it. City would not be out any money. We would be building a first-class white tablecloth steakhouse, and it should, Nick has estimated considerable sales. We could throw off the sales tax, liquor tax, and property, as I said.
Can I ask one question?
Of course.
Where are these people gonna park?
People are gonna, per the current zoning, parking on site is not required, and as soon as we try to do that, we would be cutting into the,
I know, but where are they gonna park?
they'll park on city parking, or we can park, I'm hoping to be able, I hadn't contacted them yet, but Aloft,
Use
which
their
is
deck.
right next door, has a parking deck that I think is pretty dramatically underutilized. And I think a steakhouse typically is, and Nick can speak to this, but is higher usage at night. And I don't think, at night, it's not the parking challenge in Homewood, it's at lunchtime. So I'm hoping that the Aloft, again, I have not spoken with them because I thought it would be premature before we spoke to the commission. But I'm hoping that we can cut a deal with them because with the Valley Hotel, I know that your parking's needed at night. It's not needed in the day because if people are there, they tend to go whatever brought them to the city. So I'm hoping we'll be able to use that during the day. Yes, sir.
Mike, if I'm reading the map correctly, the white parts are still the privately owned parts, or which
No,
parts of it
this is,
public?
actually, it's miscolored a little bit.
Okay.
This would be we have outdoor dining here, and then we have the entrance here. So really, our exclusive use would be like that.
Just wanted to
We
just check with that.
calculated, I think it's about 35% of the site would be
Okay.
exclusive, and the rest would be landscape, public park with benches and lighting and everything. I mean, very much, we want this to be dramatic and wonderfully done because it will play such a large part in the success of the restaurant.
Chuck, do you wanna give us any, any of your ideas on what that park?
Certainly, and as Mike mentioned, with the restaurant proposed in this upper right corner with 29th Avenue down here and 19th Street over here, is to, and there are, there's grade character, I'll call it. It's not really challenging, but to go from 29th up to a building that would sit related to the alley as well as have a barrier-free valet movement in from 19th. No steps or anything there. There's going to be fill, but I think it's going to be really the character of this with the restaurant proposed in that upper right corner. Tall, large trees going in, not the smaller ones that are a lot of times. We're talking about things that may be 20 feet or more tall to start with. You'll be walking through meandering sidewalks, some steps to address the character of the grades coming up from 29th to the restaurant, and a few over here. But it'll be a place with little undulating paths in there, scored concrete, brick accents, the large trees uplit, and some area lighting just to where it really creates a nice effect. A park that could be appreciated at night just as much as during the daytime. And connections from the sidewalks, public sidewalks. The color right here kind of stops right at the property line, but it would be, full and wider actually than it is right now. It's very narrow right here. But it would be
Can you take that down and use the screen, big screen.
Oh, there we
Oh.
go. Yeah.
So remove that out of the way, move that out of the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, the
Copy this for y'all too. So
Oh,
I'll
okay.
give you this so you can reference
You
some
know,
of the stuff.
providing a good bit of bench seating, where people can sit one at a time, enjoy their lunch, people can have a conversation. We envision, potted plants, much like, Homewood has at the different corners with color in it, possibly baskets on light poles. It just adds a lot to the space.
And I see that focal point would be like a fountain or something. Where that focal point right there.
Could be a
Something.
fountain, something, a piece of sculpture,
Yeah,
it could
yeah,
be a
yeah.
large
Sure.
pot. A lot of things could happen right there, just to kind of be a centerpiece in that park.
Okay, and Mike, I'm seeing sign down here. I assume that's the sign for the restaurant?
It is.
Up in the front, okay.
It is.
Okay.
Likely would suggest one up here off of 19th too, if there was, for, valet or people
Yeah,
dropping off
and
somebody
that's-
that needed to.
And that's the other thing. So the valet lot, so I see it coming in. How do you get back out?
The valet that's the pedestrian.
Oh, that's just
Oh,
a
that's
walk.
just, oh, okay. I
That's
thought it was
just-
like for a
no,
valet, like
no,
bringing
no,
your
that's
car
just
in.
the pedestrian.
Gotcha, okay, gotcha.
And most of the better, finer steakhouses in town now are all served by valet. Highlands Bar and Grill and Chez Fonfon, Bottega and Bottega Cafe, Automatic Seafood, Helen's.
Yeah.
They're all served with.
Yeah, so the valet would be up here and then the people would just walk
Yes.
down to the front of it. Gotcha.
There's no parking currently on 19th. It's I think yellow curb.
Yeah.
Along 29th, probably gonna pick up about 3 places actually.
Yeah.
And
Actually
then-
more than that
and
because
then
there's
next
2
to-
drives in.
And next to Soho, in the evening, you have that surface parking lot to the west of Soho, that's public parking.
Let me just say this, excuse me, I own a restaurant, sandwich shop. And there is Soho Social, Soho Standard, Soho Taco, me, Ginseng, Cobra. Now, we all have employees. Everybody has an employee. And I keep harping on parking because Homewood is in dire need of parking. I don't care when you come to Homewood, there is no parking. And while I think this is beautiful, I think it's very pretty, that is not gonna be doing any of our current, restaurant, it's not gonna do anybody any good as far as parking, because without parking, we get customers on Saturday. I've been around the block 4 times. I could never find a place to park, and I understand we've got underneath all of this, we got all that stuff over, the parking over by, chicken, where that chicken place is. But we all have employees. Everybody has an employee, and there's nowhere for the employees to park. And by the same token, there's nowhere for our customers to park. And like I said, I think it's lovely, I do. I'm not gonna say it's not pretty, it is. But it's not doing the current merchants, business people in Homewood any good. And it's not gonna, right there, you're not guaranteed that the hotel's gonna lend you their parking.
All right, thank you, Sue. I appreciate your comments, but we've got a long agenda and I've
Well,
got
I'm
to move
sorry,
on.
but
No, I appreciate your comments, but we just need to we've got to keep moving on because we've got a lot to do tonight. And I know the mayor's got to get out of here too.
All right, Mike, quickly, can you try to talk about what we envision for the
Yeah,
building itself?
I passed around a pack. It might be easier to go to section 4, or section 3 actually. Some pretty classic mid-century imagery of just kind of a lower building. Really quickly, I'll kind of explain. Citing this building in the upper right-hand corner does a lot. It gives the park presence on the street, and if you've driven by this building, there's about an 8+ foot grade change from the corner of 29th and 19th up to the top of the corner. So we've got to, when the police station goes away, we've got to navigate that grade change. The thought here is that you're perching that building up 3 or 4 feet, which would get you, if this sidewalk needs to be sloping, is going to meet ADA, and you need to get in to the building without going through stairs or having some kind of paceless ramp that we have to deal with. So the idea here would be that the building is at an elevation that allows you to come in straight off of the valet, but also just in terms of the building complementing the park, which I think it can do a lot of. Just if you pairing a restaurant with the park, I think gives a lot of positive opportunities to activate a park and vice versa. The building being up 4 feet just kind of puts you in the tree canopy just above the street, which is always a good feeling when you're elevated a little bit in terms of just an experience. And then the L shape is really just the site, some of the less attractive areas and more service areas is up in that corner, which allows us to essentially commit the property to a park while getting the building. And so the L shape is just because we don't want a large internally focused building. This would be a lot of glass and a lot of outward facing views. So some of the pictures that you have in front of you, some classic Frank Lloyd Wright imagery, lots of glazing. I mean, this building would be about bringing the outside in. And then if you flip to some of those other interior images, just a lot of natural materials, a lot of authentic materials. Obviously, it would, being able to see the cooking in this one, I think being a steakhouse, we're trying to bring in some of those classic feels. So, as Mike said, this is very early on, but it's attractive to think about solving the steakhouse problem with this site and also layering a pocket park to go with it.
I think I'll just say that to address some of your concerns. I think that anything we consider doing that's not officially city use is going to have some sort of visitors coming to it, and so trying to keep it relatively low volume, right? In terms of it's not a high rise, it's not necessarily a residential unit, which require it's going to technically have visitors coming in and out of it. And steakhouses typically have more of a late night audience. I think it's a potentially viable solution to a problem that we're having what to do with the site. My only comment would be that if we could put a rooftop bar on this thing, that's just me. That's what I would like to see. But
The rooftop on a 1 story is not that impressive.
yeah. I just like being outside.
Are you serving lunch, or
Yes.
you made the decision to serve lunch?
And in the package, we submitted a proposed sale and purchase, and I know my Councilor Kendrick's already probably over there with his red pen going to town on it. But I saw a smile when he saw the proposed. This is going to really have to be a process. This, the land would have to be replatted. The portion for the restaurant would have to be rezoned. We'd have to work on an access and easement agreement for the people crossing the public park. We'd have to work on a signage agreement. So there are a lot of things to do. And so we're not asking the city at this time to commit to anything. We're other than just commit to a good faith effort. If you're inclined to accept this, commit to a good faith effort to keep pursuing it and working towards what we hope, is a common goal and objective. And we're prepared to do that without any reimbursement or anything to try to get to the point where the city council would, the councilor says that this is a viable agreement. City council, if they're inclined, accept it, and at that point we have a binding agreement.
Do you have any kind of timeline in mind? I'm sure with all these goals.
We can move as fast, but no, we don't have
Okay.
a gun to our head as far as necessity to be complete at a certain
Gotcha.
time.
Okay, I didn't know if there was an agreement with Pahakis that, there'd be some timeline involved, but that's good to hear.
He's patient.
Yeah.
Is there parking in that alley back there? I know
I
I see
don't think
cars
so,
back
no.
there.
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
I know I
I don't
see
think
cars
there's
back there.
room.
but-
There's parking
People-
further on where people have the depth to park at.
Yeah, because that alley's pretty thin.
Is it public or is it?
I think
I counted the parking spaces and that will be taken away 50 parking spaces.
The old police parking,
That, the Sally's Port, that was Sally Port, behind the jail, they're parking, and then they park against the wall back there, all the way down to, and that's gonna do now I know I'm obsessing over this, I do obsess, because we're gonna have to close our business, we won't be able to stay open with no parking.
Maybe
and-
before next time, we could have a discussion with the hotel
before the next meeting and see if there's any,
Well, you know, in all
opportunity there.
honesty, the hotel, I don't think the occupancy is great now. The hotel may be willing to do it on a short-term basis, but I don't think you'd be able to sit there and look to the hotel necessarily. They're not gonna sign a long-term lease because they're not gonna have it encumber whatever they try to do with that property, so.
It's just a thought, but, you know, we have a deck that's really underutilized. Could they valet?
Of course
Would that
they
be
could.
a suitable place for the valet to be parking?
Yeah, but then again, as I said, just to the west of Soho, that surface parking is used heavily at lunch, but it's not so heavily used at night that the valets can't park there and run.
Right here, oh, I would say, I mean, I would argue at that
It's-
point, it's used, I mean, now that with Soho standard, I mean, it is, it's
Yeah.
It's
pretty full.
used, I don't know that it's full, but I would agree it's used, but I think there is parking in the deck down below.
Oh, I
Could
would agree with
easily
that.
be used
That I
as
would agree with, yes.
As a valet in
Yes.
particular, because
that.
that's an easy spot for
Yeah.
valet drivers to drive to, so I would agree with Councilor Allen.
With the rooftop bar also?
If you can get them to do a rooftop bar, I'm all for it. I'm not against that. But what I do like about this is, again, it is something that is not intrusive. And I think most of what could go in this spot would be much more intrusive. And I think the fact that this particular style of restaurant is going to, unlike many other restaurants that could go there, is going to be geared towards nighttime. And in nighttime, we have far fewer people downtown. There just aren't that many.
Well, yeah, the parking lot there where, cars and all, I mean, that
That's
pretty much
owned.
closes down.
Yeah, that's their
That's owned by
private,
them.
that's privately
That's
owned by
city.
them.
And so even after hours?
I mean,
Yeah, well,
I,
let us park, I
I
mean, you
doubt
could,
it.
They own that parking.
They
They
don't.
would have to agree to that.
they'd have to agree to,
Well,
but I
the-
mean.
the benefit is our
18th
lot
Street.
is open in the evenings behind
Yeah.
City Hall, and it's sometimes full for a little bit, but it clears out about 6:30.
Mhm.
I agree with your commentary. I believe it's an excellent activation of the lot. You know, it's low intensity, provides all of the concerns that we've heard of the past probably 5 years about having a pocket park, you know, having something that's low density. I think it accomplishes all those things. So
Well,
thanks for the
also,
great design.
It should be a high-volume restaurant. Steakhouses tend to be high volume. And I think it will throw off as much tax as a much taller office building would, which of course throws off no sales tax and only property tax, which I know is relatively less important to cities than a sales or liquor tax.
I would suggest, I mean, I'm hearing, with some additional discussion needed, but hearing that this is being viewed mostly positively, that I would suggest that we continue to have some discussions with Mike and let him start working on this, because I do think that I think it's a property that we need to work on sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
It's
Could end up as an older
it's
worse.
time to do something with it, and I personally think this is a good idea for it. So I would recommend that if the committee's fine with it, that we start having more concrete discussions about this with Mike and see if we can come up with something that everyone feels good about.
All right, well, we appreciate y'all coming in and listening to all of our comments, and I think what we'll do is we'll carry it over here for the eventuality that we'll need to move on something if there's an agreement to be signed or a contract to be done. But in the meantime, we'll keep having conversations about, you know, addressing people's concerns and figuring out what to do.
All right, thank
All
you.
right, thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm carrying that over.
Gotcha.
All right, now we're jumping up to the top of the agenda and to item number 141124, which was a request for consideration to amend the tax incentive agreement with Piggly Wiggly construction project, also coming from the mayor. Alex, you want to introduce and talk about this briefly?
So y'all will recall that we already did a tax incentive agreement for the Piggly Wiggly. That was a number of years ago, and due to some construction issues, that has gotten delayed. So we need to restructure the agreement so that we make sure that they're getting the money that we promised them. They are not, I want to be clear, they are not asking for any money other than what we've already agreed to, which is the $3.5 million. What we're doing is restructuring the agreement simply to make sure that they have time to get it. And so that's what they've asked for, is a restructuring of that agreement. Murray Lake and Charles Terry are here tonight, and so they can speak to it. My understanding is that Mr. Kendrick still needs to receive some stuff from y'all about this, but if the committee is agreeable to it, then what I would suggest is that you go ahead and direct them to talk with Mr. Kendrick about getting the documents together, and that way you can go ahead and send it out, and then we'll get, once the documents are together, which is not going to be next Monday in all likelihood, but we'll be ready to get the agreement, the amended agreement approved once they get the documents worked out.
All right, y'all wanna come on up? Sure, yeah, y'all come on in.
I'm Murray Legg, and this is Charles Terry, and we'd love to, to answer any questions that you have. But, it's all been struck, the agreement has. We met today with Piggly Wiggly, and what has slowed us down is when we started this project, Andy and his family were the ones that were doing the project, and then they've taken on another partner in this. And that partner has raised some questions and wanted to kind of look at the deal. So that has slowed everything down for us being able to sign the agreement and move on. But we met today. It was a fantastic meeting, and we feel like that that we can be under construction. We're hoping by June or July at some point in that time frame.
And so it's the same money.
Yes, ma'am. We're not asking for any more money.
It's just updating and
the time frame.
The time frame.
Extending
the time.
Extending, correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
And what was the initial? What was our initial date?
Our initial date, I would have to go back and look.
It's been long.
It's been so
We've
long,
jumped
I can't-
past it.
I
Okay.
can't even tell you
Okay.
when it
We're
was.
way past it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
This is over like a 10-year
But
period.
it's extending not just the date when we start, but the
Right.
date,
That-
how long it takes them to get those taxes.
Right, we just want to make sure
Both
that
the-
they are able to get to their 3.5 million. In other words, we want to live up to our end of the promise.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. All right. So and so even though we know that this is not going to be voted on in our meeting next week, we can go ahead and vote to send it out
You can go
with.
ahead and,
Well, you're gonna have a public hearing, we have to advertise.
How long does that have to be?
Well, it's at least a week.
so what I would say,
We've got documents, I sent to them 2 months ago.
Okay.
I need to have revisit with them.
Yeah.
Finish the agreement, so don't rush anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I'm saying is if we're setting a public hearing, we probably wouldn't set it until the first meeting in March.
I guess the question is,
Probably not gonna make that.
Okay, probably not gonna make that, okay? These are the things I need to know, so,
We've been waiting for months,
so why don't we,
so
if you want to carry it over, and then, I guess my question, Mike, is,
carry it over and I will get you answers to all these questions. This is the first I've heard from anybody in, a couple months.
It is. And
All
I
right.
think, Mr. Kendrick,
There's
we
a
work.
lot to digest. It's not as simple as.
okay.
just sign
So
something
we need to
on
carry,
paper.
as opposed, and so instead of sending this out to doing anything about it, we just need to carry it
Carry it
over
over.
until we can get the documents and
and
everything
then hopefully we'll
certified.
be able to set the public hearing at the next meeting.
Just a quick question.
Sure, sure.
It had initially been a 10-year agreement?
Yes.
Correct.
So are we just basically saying that potentially, if we agree, that we're resetting the clock for 10 years?
Yeah, so it's a little more complicated than that. In essence, it's restructuring the numbers just to make sure that they hit that 3.5 that we promised them, which changes, make sure we're giving them enough a year to hit that for 10 years.
For 10 years, but still 10 years.
10
and-
it's
and
still
we
10
working
years.
some of the number. Okay, I just wanted to ensure.
And we're still getting a portion of the current tax that we're getting now.
Yeah, and we promised them based on the contingency of things that they would do also, so it's not.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, we appreciate y'all coming in, we appreciate y'all being here, and we will carry this over until y'all can get together with Mr. Kendrick and kind of hash out those documents, and then we'll, hopefully at our next committee meeting, we can set that, public hearing and get that on
Okay,
the
thank you.
calendar. All right, thank y'all for being here. All right,
Thanks,
now, let's see, where am I going next? Okay, back down to new business. 050225, request for consideration to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract for professional services with Porter White for investment advising, coming to us from our finance director, Lester Smith, and Alex Wyatt. And I think Alex is gonna introduce Good Luck. Where is he? Oh, there you are. Sorry, I didn't see you come in.
I think you got the wrong, I think it's 160125, you said
Oh.
02. I may be
No,
wrong.
050225, request for consideration to authorize the mayor to enter a contract for professional service
Oh,
with Porter
man,
White for
I'm
investment
off.
advising.
Thank you, sorry,
Yeah, no, said it right.
my fault.
And I apologize for the jumping around.
Yeah.
I've got to get on a plane to be in the deposition in Arkansas in the morning, so
So we're-
Barry is being kind and letting me do the things that I need to speak to. This is an item to have an investment advisor and to change our investments to make sure that we are complying with our own policies better and the state law better. And so Lester has talked with Ms. Smith and myself about this, and Mr. Jones about this and the need for this. Which I'm gonna let them present, but what I will tell you I like about it from my meeting with them was, one, that it costs the same as what we're paying now, and two, that they can help us with how we are structuring our investments to do what's best for the city, and I think that's important. And so they also provide another service that y'all are not dealing with tonight, which is a municipal advisor service that we may consider down the road, depending on some stuff that happens. But this part, in my opinion, needs to be done now, quickly, because we need to get our investments where they need to be, and protect that money. So that's why this is important tonight, and that's why they're here. But I'm going to let Goodlow speak to everything. And I'm gonna duck out. That is not because I don't want to hear Goodlow, it's because I've already heard from Goodlow and I gotta catch a plane, so.
Safe travels. All right,
Well,
good
thank you,
luck.
Mayor. And Lester sent me a text wondering how long this was gonna take, so I'm gonna take probably 5 or 10 minutes, happy to go into more depth. I'm gonna briefly overview the firm. My colleague Ross Walker here is gonna hand out a copy of some slides that I'm gonna go through. But briefly, Porter White was founded in 1975 by my father, really starting in municipal advisory. And so we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, 50 years this fall. And one of the things that we found over the years as being investment bankers is when you raise money, people wonder, well, what are you going to do with it now? And we've sat on boards, we've sat in different circumstances in your chair with funds to invest, and then how do you do that? And so in 1975, if I encourage you to maybe go to page 6, sort of a brief timeline of Porter White & Company. There are two parts. The municipal advisor is registered with the SEC. It's a special category under Dodd-Frank. It's a fiduciary advisor for raising money. There's a registered investment advisor, which is also a fiduciary advisor regulated by the SEC, which basically means we must tell you everything and we must put your interest first. And that's sort of been the way we've done business. We do business for retirement plans, we do business for businesses and other institutions, and manage over $700 million now and approximately, let's see, 175 in institutional assets. A number of broad clients on page 7. If you look at some of the logos, you may recognize them. Some of the work we did for these clients was just developing an investment policy. For say the UA system was one that I worked on. For others, we're actually managing the day-to-day funds like we're contemplating here. On page 8 is just an exclusion from your own fiscal policies. And I wanted to have a brief discussion, particularly of item 1. The finance director shall invest city funds according to 4 criteria in their order of importance. 1, legality. 2 is safety. 3 is liquidity, and 4 is yield. Now, the legality part comes from Alabama law. And to be honest, it is not the clearest section of the Alabama code. I'm not a lawyer, I read it. Maybe all sections of the code are not that clear, but this one is not that clear for me as an investment professional. And so it's easy to miss things. But it's important not to. And we've been looking at this for a long time and wondering why so much of it does get missed. And every once in a while, an auditor, and it's happened with other cities in our area, raises a flag saying your investments are not consistent with the Alabama code. On page 9, our scope of services is basically designed to help your finance director complete everything that you say in your fiscal policies and come up with a policy that's presented to council that's updated and make sure it's appropriate. There's additional analysis that we like to do that really drives how should you be investing your funds. And then there's the management part, which is actually placing trades or choosing investments and selecting things like that, all permitted under a policy that you would have. So on page 10, I briefly want to run through our summary of the Alabama code because I think it's important of where things are missed. And so once again, I'm not a lawyer. You have a lawyer in the room, but correct me, so this is just a summary. The first is U.S. government obligations. So if it says U.S. Treasury, that's direct to the U.S. government. Then it has this section for federal agencies with full faith and credit. And it lists some: Federal Housing Authority, the General Services Administration, HUD, some others. They tend not to be the securities that we see municipalities purchase. They're a little more difficult to own and things like that. They can be called early. They're not as suitable. They are full faith and credit of the United States government. The third is basically FDIC or insured or collateralized CDs. That's importantly, it's not just any bank account. It's a bank account that has collateral behind it or is guaranteed by the FDIC. Number 4 is pre-refunded obligations. So if you buy a taxable muni would be the best case scenario for a tax-exempt organization. It must be refunded. You've refunded debt before. You put treasuries in escrow. You're basically buying a treasury. Now, number 5 is interesting because what it guides is collective trusts or think mutual funds. I'm on page 10 here. And so it says you can do 65% or of 1 to 4 above. By the way, not 6 and 7 below is what the current law says. And then 35% of another list, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, repurchase agreements, mortgage securities, things like that. And what we see a lot is a lot of municipalities own that 35% bucket outright, not inside a collective investment vehicle. And so that immediately catches things. Or we see things in money market funds that one of the money market funds I looked at that I think you hold has commercial paper in it, which is great. It's a good security, it's liquid, it's highly rated, but it's not defined that way in Alabama law. Should it be? Probably yes. Is it? No. So remember, some of this is not necessarily what is the most prudent investment decision. Your policy says first is legality, and if commercial paper yields more, you can't buy it, except if you buy it outright. And yield was number 4 on our list. And then there's bank acceptances. On page 11, your finance director provided us, I think, 3 different statements that we just looked at. We only found 1 permitted holding. That could have been others, we could have missed things. Only 1 was permitted. Your auditors flagged a lot of things. Some of them would be permitted if they were held in a certain way. And all of them were probably done to get a little more yield, maybe have a little less liquidity, but we went through that. So the first thing to do is, that we would do is have a discussion of how are we going to move this into a permitted investment. And I fully recognize that the yield would be lower because the reason these were purchased, and I get these emails all the time. You can buy this Fannie Mae security, it yields 50 basis points above treasuries. Doesn't that sound great? Everyone would like 0.5% more on their money. Unfortunately for you, as the city of Homewood, can't do that under Alabama law. Now, number 12 on the next slide. The mayor said the cost should be approximately the same. Now, this is one difference between a fiduciary advisor and someone who's not. And so I looked at the statements, and I saw one where they were explicitly charging a fee. I suspect that there were other below the iceberg fees being earned in that account. In most cases, what we see, even say a money market fund, there's a revenue share beneath the surface that is not easily observable. So the way we work is we send an invoice every quarter. You see exactly what it is. That's like one of your statements. And then we do not take any other money that would be below the surface, because that comes back to being a registered investment advisor. So I never know exactly what it is. There was one logo, and I won't repeat who it was, where they had us analyze their accounts. All they were owning was CDs, and they weren't paying any fees. And what we saw is that, well, in actuality, every CD had a 0.5% charge on it. But that wasn't disclosed and didn't have to be disclosed. And so we're trying to get this, the way we do business is, yes, I think the yield's going to be a little lower because Alabama law currently doesn't allow us to do certain things. But you will see everything above, and there won't be that sort of hidden iceberg below. I am not going to go too much more into some of the details here, but I think once you go through the investment policy process, because Alabama law is so restrictive, there's really one variable left that the committee really and the policy will drive, which is how long-term you can invest your funds. And that goes back to what is the money for? If we're trying to reserve to build a new fire station one day, if that's going to be 15 years from now, well, guess what? A 15-year security might be appropriate.
The fire chief liked that.
He liked it.
He didn't like the 15 years.
The 15-year part, okay. But and so that's the difference in looking at something day to day versus, is the money going to be there to build the building? And in that case, we might buy something that grows with inflation, that has a lower yield, but grows with inflation and takes that risk off of it. And so I would spend more time when time was allowed to discuss that, because that is one of the new things that we do, is that in your current statements, and I'm sure you're getting, no one calculates a return. And so when you start calculating a return, you need to put that in context to understand, one, how well you're doing, but two, understanding bonds can move around in prices. We saw that in 2022. And so there is some newness to this, and being transparent also means transparent with how your funds are doing. So I planted a few seeds for later, maybe, but basically our role would be to come in and help provide additional background to both invest in the funds, but make sure you have a policy to approve and do that on an ongoing basis.
Does
Happy to
anybody
take
have
any
any
questions.
other questions for Goodloe?
I just out of ignorance, I want to ask a question.
Sure.
Where is this money now? Where's this?
In several different places.
This money currently is, I would say, with 3 different entities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the
Does
thought.
this have to have, like, fiscal, can happen tomorrow if we say yes, or is this
Wouldn't be tomorrow.
It would be
Well, I mean-
tomorrow. I think the first thing, and Goodloe could speak to this, but I think what everybody needs to understand is some of these investments are not liquid. Right, so it's not like we pick up the phone, we call, and
Yeah.
we convert them to cash, right? So that's gonna involve some communication with these entities. Ultimately, the goal is to take those dollars,
Consolidate
them,
them.
right? And then the next step is going to be, I think we anticipate maybe about 12 weeks, to actually putting together a very solid investment policy, right? And there's some literature out there with the GFOA as to what municipalities need embedded in that, but I think doing that, in addition, working with Goodloe, then you all know that you've got a solid investment policy. And then there needs to be, I think, starting out, quarterly meetings, right, with the investment advisor, back to the council, the mayor, the city manager, to advise them on what is actually happening, right? You need market updates, and you need to know how your funds are growing. But the third thing, which I think is one of the most important, is trying to understand how you leverage your money plus your debt capacity to figure out how to meet future needs with regards to your infrastructure. Does that make sense? So that's kind of like where we're trying or wanting to move here. But the number one thing, as Goodloe's already said, is we need to make sure that right out of the gate, all of our investments are in accordance with state code.
Yeah. And I guess legally, we've boarded agreements. One is a contract with Porter White Investment Advisors. We don't hold money. We use Fidelity Investments as a custodian, and we service the account on your behalf, so you have both of those agreements. So those two would have to be entered into. Some of the funds are very liquid and could be transferred very quickly. And I've done this before, and some are going to require conversation, which basically say the city of Homewood should not bear the cost of you having purchased something that's not permanent. And so that, I can have that conversation. So
We would like for you to have that conversation.
And so I know how it's gone before, and I'll let people know how it's gone before, and know people at both institutions. So we'll just literally, we can look at how these things trade, and they don't trade a lot. So these organizations basically have to take them back on their balance sheet and sell them to someone else who is legally permitted to buy them, basically.
You just gotta excuse my ignorance, but this pot of money, or it's in three different places, is it meant to fund capital only, or payroll? I mean, is this an operating income account? I mean,
These are,
I'm very.
I'll let
clueless on
reserves,
this.
that is the
I'm new to the
longer,
party. Fill me
that
in.
is something that should be an investment policy that you can read and understand, and I
Right,
don't
so the
have.
majority of this, I'm gonna say, is in the rainy day fund.
Okay.
Okay, so these are investments that have been set aside. Currently, they are not used for what I would call general fund expenditures. Okay, it's money that's been set aside.
And it's been sitting there for quite a while.
Yes, sir. I think about that much, yeah.
That's about what I think we last time I knew it.
So we've been trying to maximize the rate of return, just look at the books, but not necessarily meeting all the
Well,
legal
it's not
stuff.
it's not even that. It's we're trying to get our investments in places that they're supposed to be.
I get it.
That's really number one on the
Correct.
list.
So get everything invested in what we'd call legal investments. But two, what you wanna do is you just don't wanna set that money and park it there. That money needs, you need some sort of strategy on how to leverage those dollars going into the future. Does that make sense? And the only way to do that is that's where we start talking about putting together some sort of 10, 15-year plan, right? And then figuring out how you're gonna leverage the cash that you currently have along with any debt capacity you have to fund that. Right now, from my perspective, and all cities do this, is they just work on a year at a time.
Yeah, what's right in front of us.
And that's fine from your general fund or your operating budget, but I think overall, there's gotta be a longer strategy
totally agree.
as to our investments and our debt capacity.
No, I think it's, I mean, we just, this sum of money is beyond the scope of any part-time board or
Correct.
mayor or anything else. So.
That's why I think it's important though to have these
Yeah.
quarterly updates, right?
Yeah,
That way
right.
everybody is aware of everything that's out there.
Yeah, because I will say it's been a while
I'm
since
new
we've
to the
had it.
party.
Yeah,
So
let
you
me just give you an example. I have a client,
Yeah.
private foundation, has 30-year Federal Home Loan Bank securities. They came into our management, it's like, well, this nonprofit's gonna be around a long time, we'll just let them mature. I don't wanna pay the cost. It was really hard to get bids on the securities. If you needed the money tomorrow, it would be harder to sell them. And that's why Alabama law restricts them to a collective trust so that you can sell it in pools with others. So, probably, maybe not, but that's the way it goes.
Mike,
Yes, ma'am.
since we're dealing with sort of two different,
In the resolution, they're one document.
it's just one document. Okay, all right.
It's their document and you authorize them to open the.
Gotcha,
account.
for Fidelity, okay. So the motion
One
would,
resolution includes both documents.
okay, and this is for the mayor to sign that agreement? Hmm,
Unless
for the,
there's a desire for it to be done.
right, yeah, but for the mayor to sign the agreement would be the motion, okay. That's it.
So moved.
Alright. Motion from Mr. Almond, second from Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. That is 5-0 to approve. Thank you for
Thank you.
your
Thank you.
presentation. We appreciate all that information. Thank you for being here. Okay, woo, all right. Halfway done. Not even halfway done. Okay, now I'm going back up to the top. All right, 160125, bid date set for February 10th, 2025 at 4:30 p.m. for professional services related to payroll. Lester Smith, our finance director, Alex Wyatt, the mayor. We held that bid opening last week, and we had sent that information out to 5 different companies. 4 of those companies decided to submit bids. Of the 4 companies that submitted bids, only one met all of the bid qualifications, and by that I mean we required them to submit certain things, and only one bidder submitted both a bid bond and a non-collusion affidavit with their bid. And I had conversations with several of the others, and they just said they don't typically do that, and so I mean that made them not qualified because they didn't submit all the required items. So we are Lester, do you want to give them more information, show them what you've got?
Yes, so basically, I could kind of walk you through the methodology that
Yeah.
I used. Okay, so the first thing I did is I tried to do the best I can through reaching out and talking to others about a reputable website that I could use to determine who are the players in the market where we're at. What I mean in the market where we're at, North American market with an employee base at our level. So I went, I looked, based on what was out there, I selected 5 companies, right? We sent bids out to those 5 entities. One came back and said, we're not gonna be able to do this, right? So there were 4 more. What we then did is we had one that came in extremely low, right? Extremely low.
Like weirdly low.
Which caused me concern. That one got thrown out. Another one came in extremely high, right? But when you look at it and you look at the other 2 was within, I would say, a 2% difference, right? But when you look at it, and Mike can maybe help me out here, but when you look at the RFP that went out and the requirement that was sent back, there was only one that complied in entirety with the requirements. It was one of those that was in that middle there. And it was one that, of these 5 that we've sent out, of 4 that responded, I've had experience in my career with 3 of them, right? The one that we're actually selecting, I'm fine with. I have no issues with. I've used them before, right? But the recommendation is to go with Paycom.
Paycom was the only submitted bidder that met all the qualifications of the RFP, meaning they included both a bid bond and a non-collusion affidavit.
A lot of these entities, for some reason, legal departments didn't want.
Yeah, there were lawyers that just didn't want to
Yeah.
do the bid bond or the certified check, which,
Can you
yeah,
just give
that's
a little
fine.
clarity as to what will be performing? Is
Yeah.
it mostly payroll, like in just?
Well, they'll be conducting some HR, they'll be doing some HR functions for us as well. In
scope of
addition to
work.
taking that, which the payroll is a huge,
Sure.
that's a real big thing that'll be, and it'll free up our staff in the finance department. I'm sure those ladies back there can tell you. They've got plenty to do, so it'd be nice to have maybe that off the table.
Tell us a little bit about Paycom.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar.
So, well,
I know some people know.
Paycom's been around for a while. My first experience with them, I want to think, was maybe in 2013. And like so many of these payroll providers now, it's a single platform, right? So everything's built from the base up. The market that they serve is what I would call primarily mid-markets, kind of like we are. What we're looking at, in the old days when you thought of payroll software companies, all you thought about was payroll taxes. All of them have evolved. They've evolved away from not just payroll, but also to what we call human resource management. I mentioned to you before, 2 of the biggest areas of concern I think you all have is one is in what I call HR management, and the other is in payroll processing. Okay, So you've got the payroll piece. The payroll will actually be processing all of the payroll checks, right? In addition with that, what comes along with that package is expense reimbursement. So now instead of people filling out a paper expense report, they'll be going into the system, they'll be uploading their receipts, which means now you have to get authorization on the front end. There will be no reimbursement of an expenditure that doesn't have a receipt because it's got to be in on the front end. There'll be workflows established, so they go up through the appropriate level for approval, right? And then the check will actually be cut out of that system, right? So that'll save us on our end as far as that actual processing there. Payroll checks will be done, but then the other important thing is going to be the compliance piece, right? The filing with the tax agencies. Where we've gotten in trouble at the city of Homewood is timely submission of tax forms to the IRS, right? That is not an area where you want to be late. So that'll be taken care of. The other element that'll be added here is what I call the human resource management. So this will allow onboarding, right? So you'll be able to push out openings. You'll be able, if a candidate comes in, instead of processing paperwork with I-9s and everything else, they'll be able to do that online. They'll be able to submit their support for that document online. And then at that time, we'll also be able to assign any company assets that need to be assigned, right? And they'll be tracked in the system. And then you also have offboarding, which will be the same. If somebody is all of a sudden deciding to leave the city of Homewood, we'll know up front what assets we need to get back from them. Right, so at some point in time, when and if, hopefully, you decide to expand and have someone to actually manage an HR department, this will provide good support there. As it relates to current staff, what happens to current staff? There is still the ongoing management of payroll internally. So when you think about the reports that go out to the departments to approve time cards, expense reports, that'll still be being done in-house and monitored in-house.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Will they be able to assist us with the creation of an employee manual?
No, that's through Mike.
We're doing that.
We're working on that right now.
They should have timely input about things that we're.
I'm just wanting to make sure, because in terms of the compliance piece, right, I think that's going to be an important piece as to understanding what they'll be required to do in terms of credit cards, reimbursements, or what have you.
Yeah.
And so it should be all
so they're
symmetrical.
not, most of those companies, I mean, obviously they have lawyers, but they're not lawyers. I mean, they're
No, but I mean, but the companies have evolved. I use a HR company,
Right.
a payroll company that does that also.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking, because they do that also.
Yeah, but Mike is working on the.
But that's
he's
fine,
been-
if we're deciding to do that in-house, that's fine, I'm just
Yeah.
curious as to what's the scope of work.
So what's gonna happen is whatever policies, let's say whatever, expense reimbursements we come up with,
Yeah.
right? Regardless of what they are, those will be entered into the system. So what the system allows you to do is enter parameters, right? So let's say, where I've been before, if there was a per diem of meals during the day or hotel charges, right? If you entered something outside that parameter, it wouldn't let you proceed. It would tell you, you've got an issue here. So whatever those rules or requirements are, we will build that where we can into the actual system itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does, thank you.
Yeah, so it'll be a process where we work basically with them to make sure that our policies are reflected in the system, and that if they have things that they need of us, that those are reflected in our policies.
Sure.
And is it an annual contract? This is an annual contract that we're signing?
So what
It's
we've
a
done
3
with this
years.
contract is a 3-year contract. The other things that we're looking at doing here to make it easy is we are looking to migrate 100% of the staff over to direct deposit. And then the other thing that these systems, the other thing this system allows us to do for your seasonal workers is instead of giving, because a lot of the youth that apply for these jobs, they don't have checking accounts. This will allow them to use what we call a pay card,
Visa
right?
card.
That we can load money on for them.
What's the cost?
The cost is going with, you have that, along
Yes.
with implementation fees, the cost, and this is predicated on roughly an annual average employee base of about 420. What I did is I worked with Cammie. I think we have about 380 employees for 8 months during the year.
Plus the
We have
summer.
about 500 for the summer. Took that, added those numbers up, divided by 12, we came up to about 420. Average annual cost should be right around $128,000.
And once, if we move to approve working with them, that will allow then Mike to deal with them and negotiate that cost a little bit. So there's that option.
Now, I want to make sure everybody understands something. A lot of the cost associated with any type of payroll service is going to be risk mitigation, right? We were fortunate to get out of it, but we did have the IRS, I think it was in 21, late on the ACA distributions, right? Penalty was $312,000. Now,
Tasha had it.
Tasha was able to go in and get that abated, right? Because that was the first time. That's what I'm saying. Your biggest risk in payroll is not meeting timely filings.
That's right.
Right?
So that's basically, it's 25 a month per employee, basically.
Correct.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay.
What, one question
Oh,
before
sure.
you.
Yeah.
Well, we might have a second. No,
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Motion for Ms. Alamon, second for Mr.
Where are we
Wall.
funding this from?
This will be coming out of
Contractual services.
contractual services.
In finance?
Yes, sir. And because this will be really, when you think about it, it's not going to be a full year cost because of the fact that we're already into this year. So I think the actual cost for this fiscal year will be somewhere around maybe $70,000.
When are you thinking we're starting this?
This will be started to be ready to go live May 1st is when we're looking at
Because
it.
it's got to be in concert with our Encode 10.
It'll be for the payroll effective April 20th.
That's a good question.
Are we transferring money into finance to contractual services? Because I don't see the line. Or are we just adding this in there and taking it
It's
from
already in
carryover
there.
fund balance? Oh, is it?
So it's,
Missing it.
the account you're looking for is 29520-400. There.
You say it's there. I was just looking.
All right, so I have a motion from Mr. Alamon and a second from Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor of approving this and approving the
And you
mayor
can
sign the
keep that
contract?
Aye.
Aye, all right, that is 5-0, going out to council on Monday night. Thank you.
You do.
P-A-Y-C-O-M?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, all one word. Okay, next item. Gosh, Blake is like, get me out of here. 010225, request to declare 2 Harley-Davidson surplus and some other miscellaneous items coming to us from Blake Graves, our fleet maintenance director. Blake, what you got for us? Oh, here we go.
I'll make it short.
Okay,
We've got
that's
some.
new.
Yeah. Do y'all have a list of all the items?
Yeah, up here.
Okay.
Does anybody need to see them?
If you look, it's also coming from Chief Ross and Berkeley.
Okay.
It's just, a lot of this is miscellaneous items that were left over when, after Gordon retired, we're just getting rid of all this stuff that just needs to be gone, old stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff from the police department, it's kennel stuff they had stored up, no longer needed. If you look, there is a lot of vehicles on here, we're surplusing those, no longer needed.
Yeah.
A lot of older equipment, so we're gonna be surplusing all that.
And then the 2 motorcycles, are those,
Those are-
those are wrecked?
No,
No.
those are they're gonna be surplus and sold to the city of Iron.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, awesome.
All the other items sold at Butterfield.
Okay, all right. Can I get a motion to approve surplusing the items listed on that?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion for Mr. Gwaltney, second for Mr. Alamon. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that is 5-0. That ordinance will be.
Wolverton's heartbroken, you're offering motorcycles.
It's gonna go to the surplus market for that.
All right, 020225, request permission to provide an update on the Kenilworth Stormwater Project. Also, Mr. Smith is probably anxious to.
Thanks,
Patient people back here.
Hold it right here for a second, Brian. So I asked Councilor Smith to put me on the agenda. I'm gonna ask that this item be carried over, so every other week that we're in here, I can provide an update on this project. They started, you may remember, back in November. And so there are 2 things. One is a change order that I'm gonna ask you to send out to council tonight, but the other one is just to carry this item over so we can talk through any issues that they're having in the neighborhood every other week. We talked about this before. Unit price contracts and the way we set them up is by, so the engineer designs drawings gets plans and then attaches quantities to them. And so this is how much each contractor bids on the project. And then this is the actual price that this contractor bid on the project, and they were the low bidder, so that's the number that we stand behind, right, for each item. Then the total numbers add up to the total contract amount. In construction, in real time, these numbers go up and down, right? Every day they move. And so when we get to the end of the project, we're over on some and we're under on some. And what we do at the very end of the project, and we just did this for 18th Street a couple months ago, I think, is we get the over and the under, and we find out what the total cost is, and then we do one change order at the end for the overs and for the unders. So just a quick example, silk fence, we had $1,450 in the bid amount, and we haven't used any yet, so we're gonna get a significant savings there. For our asphalt binder, which is road paving, we're gonna go over on that because we already have, and we're not done paving the road yet, so we're gonna be over. All right. Go to the next slide, Brian, sorry. When we have change orders in the middle of the project, we had change order number 1 where we had to hire Alabama Power to come out and hold a pole while we worked around it. That was an unforeseen condition. So we added a line item. So whenever we add a line item, that's a change order. That was change order number 1. Change order number 2, which is before you tonight, is for foundation backfill commercial. So item 34, we bid 100 cubic yards. We got a price from the contractor of $139 per cubic yard. We're actually gonna need about 500 cubic yards of aggregate. So this is foundation backfill. What that means is it's 57 stone. It's rocks that go back into the hole when the trench is underneath the road. So if we're in somebody's yard, we excavate the hole, we replace the pipe, and we can put dirt back in it. Underneath the road, we put 57 stone back in it. So because that
means if you're boring under the road,
we're not boring anything, we're open cutting.
They're literally
So
cutting
there's
it
a
wide
trench.
so you're then having to put 57 stone back in there.
That's right.
And then cover it up.
And I will say those cutouts have been large.
Yeah, they've been massive.
They are huge.
Is that the problem? It's more cutout than you expected?
There were a couple of things, I think, that was the reason why the quantity got missed. One of those is that I don't think that requirement, which is a state out, so we bid the job under ALDOT specifications, and that is one of the requirements. The other thing that's confusing is that for any pipe that goes in the ground, as a part of the pipe cost, the actual pipe cost, it includes bedding, so 57 stone up to the middle of the pipe. And then anything on top of that is considered foundation backfill. So that part got missed.
And we pay for the foundation backfill outside of that contract, I guess, or however that works.
Say that again.
I keep going, I understand
Okay.
what you're saying.
All right, so since the amount was so much greater than what was originally bid, the contractor agreed to reduce his unit price from $139 to $75.
But for the 500 instead of the
For everything over, right?
Yeah.
So he could have said, no, we're gonna overrun that line item and you're gonna pay $139, because that's what we were obligated to. But instead, we're asking for a change order number 2 for the same thing for foundation backfill, but at a different price.
Okay. So we're adding a line item for 400 cubic yards at $75.
475 cubic yards.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's that.
It's about $36,000.
It was $35,550.
Yep.
We're still within budget.
Yeah.
We are, the budget was $720. Go to the next slide, Brian. What I've done is, and I'm going to share this with you guys every other week. Yeah, this one. This is kind of my running total at the top. So every time I get an invoice, these numbers update. They update every day, but I don't know what they are until we get an invoice. So right now we're probably around $45,000, $46,000 over the bid amount, which is still in that 10% range, which we've talked about before being a pretty good target number. And so if we live here within that $45,000 over, then we'll still be within the project budget.
Okay. All right, and this is not part of that, but we did talk about the fence. They would like the fence up on the Kenilworth side. Do we still need to deal with that too?
We can talk about that. That's gonna come later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably when it's done.
Right.
Yeah, okay. All right, so the, motion here is to approve the change order for the foundation backfill, increase and adding that line item for that additional amount.
I'll make a motion.
All right. Motion from Mr. Brandt. I think I heard Mr. Harden say second. I'm gonna give it to him second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. That is approved. 030225, request permission for the mayor to execute an ALDOT resolution for resurfacing work on US 280 Rosedale Drive. Mr. Smith again.
Yeah, I don't have it. This won't take a second.
Okay.
So ALDOT bid a project that is along 280 corridor,
Okay.
and it includes Pump House Road, and it came in way over budget. So they aren't sure what they're gonna do right now, but I've heard that the resurfacing piece, they're gonna do that no matter what. And the resurfacing piece includes resurfacing Rosedale Drive,
Okay.
which is 280. So that, the resolution that they sent, that I sent Mr. Kendrick, just basically says we support it.
So that left turn lane too, coming, like if you're coming from, Mountain Brook, turning left into downtown, it's just very torn up, that left turn lane. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
It's in front of
That's
Robertson
where you turn
Bank.
onto 19th place.
Yeah.
It will not include that?
No, I don't believe so.
Ooh, that left turn lane is bad.
Cause this will just be the actual roadway, right?
Yeah, this is Rosedale Drive.
Yeah, like the actual.
Which
roadway.
basically starts at 31 and goes all the way to 18th Street.
Yes.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
When they slip a clause in, they'll fix their streetlights by the way.
Motion from
Yeah.
Mr. Allemond, second from Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. 040225, request for consideration of solar powered speed signs on Rumson Road. Counselor Andrus, I believe we have come to a resolution for this that will not cost us anything.
I would ask, can we carry it over and make sure that we're
Those-
situated?
Yeah, sure.
But I love it. I mean, Peter
Yeah.
also told me that the, one hasn't worked in a long time, and I know you told me that Wellington's not happy with having them there.
Well, and one of the main people who wanted it there is no longer living on the street. But we will, and Randy said he's gonna get out there and test, he figures it's like I figured, it's a battery that just needs to be replaced, so I think we're okay, but he's gonna check on to make sure, but we can carry it over and that way verify that they're fine. Yep.
I'm happy with that
Okay,
otherwise.
all right.
Thank you.
050225, request for consideration to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract for professional, oh no, we already did that, sorry. Sorry, I'm rehashing. 070225, request for consideration of adding a streetlight at the intersection of Melrose Place and Overlook, Counselor myself. And this was also going to public safety. Randy went out and there actually is a street light there. It is just completely covered in vines and kudzu and whatever, wisteria. So we're gonna ask Berkeley's guys to hopefully clean that thing off and get it going. And then
Wow.
if there's any issue, but we should be able to drop this, so if I can get a motion to drop.
Is it one right there? Straight
Yeah,
ahead?
it's right there.
Yeah, it's right there. It's just completely.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh my God.
It became a tree.
It did, it became a tree. So if I could get a motion to drop that.
Wow.
Motion to drop.
Second.
All right, motion from Mr. Gwaltney to drop, second from Mr. Harden. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Drop it. All right, and we'll drop that in public safety too. 180225, request for consideration of placing advertisement with Homewood magazine. This is the chamber magazine. Ms. Andrus.
So this is the magazine right here, and for a full page, which is what we always do, a full page, 4-color ad in the 2025 annual chamber guide is $17.95. It's a discount of $200 off the regular price.
We have this budgeted, I think.
It's in the
This is something
it'll come out of the
over here.
advertising line item. Yeah, that's the, what we typically do is run the same ad. We might change pictures out and
We need a
update some
picture of
copy.
the whole council.
Yes, we do.
because
Is everybody
Jody-
gonna be here on the 24th, by the way?
I will be, yeah.
That
We need a new picture with Jody.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna charge you extra if they put my picture.
They will.
I'll make a
We'll
motion to approve
Photoshop.
this.
All right, motion to approve for Mr. Brandt.
Second.
Second for Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. 5-0. That is approved. Thank you all. And with no further items on the agenda, we are adjourned.